Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, Israel agrees to humanitarian pauses in the fighting in Gaza, and the IDF closes in on Hamas strongholds. Plus, a look at some of the 300 miles of terror tunnels beneath Gaza homes, hospitals, and mosques. Plus, an explosive revelation. Freelance journalists tipped off about Hamas's plans on October 7th, supplying major mainstream media outlets with horrifying images of attacked Israeli communities. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Inside the Gaza Strip, the IDF is closing onto key Hamas strongholds. And for the first time since the beginning of the war, Israel has also agreed to limited daily humanitarian pauses. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told Fox News that the pauses that the White House announced will be limited and only in different neighborhoods so that civilians can get away. But he again made clear there will be no ceasefire until all the hostages are released.
No, the fighting continues against the Hamas enemy, the Hamas terrorists, but in specific locations for a given period of a few hours here, a few hours there, we want to facilitate a safe passage of civilians away from the zone of fighting.
So far, thousands of Gazans have been able to flee the fighting in the north to safer areas in the south. Netanyahu also said Israel doesn't have a timetable for its prosecution of the war.
I've set goals. I didn't set a timetable because, you know, it can take more time. I wish it'll take little time. But we're proceeding step by step, reducing our casualties in the process, trying to reduce and minimize civilian casualties and maximize the casualties of the Hamas terrorists. And so far, I think it's proceeding well.
For the first time, the Israeli Defense Forces Chief of Staff entered deep into the heart of the Gaza Strip. The Israeli military captured one of Hamas's main bases, which it used to plan and prepare for the October 7th massacre. The IDF showed some of Hamas's facilities and weapons are located next to schools, kindergartens, medical clinics, and mosques. And the role of the media has become an issue again, after the media watchdog group posted a photo of freelance photographer Hassan Elysia being kissed by Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar on October 7th. After the expose of freelance journalists on the scene of the massacre, who have worked for publications like AP, CNN, and the New York Times, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tweeted, "These journalists were accomplices in crimes against humanity. Their actions were contrary to professional ethics." The news services said they had no idea of any advanced knowledge of the attacks, and AP and CNN cut ties with him. But Alex Trayman, Jerusalem bureau chief of the Jewish News Syndicate, tells CBN News Hamas uses the mainstream media for its own purposes. For instance, when its Ministry of Health claims so far 10,000 civilians have been killed.
Hamas has every incentive to try to inflate the number of civilians that are killed in Gaza to create this appearance of a humanitarian disaster that Israel is causing.
Trayman says it fits Hamas's media warfare.
The information arena is one of the most important battlefields for Hamas in this conflict. Once Hamas attacks with rockets, so Israel is forced to attack back. And when Israel attacks back, well, that's when it all started. And that's when the civilian death counts start to be counted and reported. And that this pressure creates a lot of diplomatic delegitimization of the state of Israel. And that is really what Hamas is hoping to achieve. They want the international community to demonize and delegitimize the state of Israel.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem. It's been dubbed the Gaza Metro, the intricate web of deadly tunnels buried deep beneath the Gaza Strip. In this latest phase of the war, an elite IDF unit is methodically going through more than 300 miles of tunnels. Its mission is to destroy Hamas's ability to use them for their terror operations. George Thomas has more from southern Israel.
Israel says the noose around Hamas in Gaza City is tightening.
Our activities are hitting at the heart of Hamas capabilities. We eliminated dozens of commanders. We blocked many tunnels, and we are hitting the enemy hard.
48 hours after breaching city walls, IDF soldiers like High Mailspin are now targeting the extensive network of terror tunnels deep beneath the surface, dubbed the Gaza Metro.
Metro is a nickname used by Israel of the underground Gaza. There's Gaza on top and there's Gaza underground.
Mailspin, who has served almost 20 years in the Israeli army, was called up a month ago to take part in the military operations in the Gaza Strip. Today, he is right in the thick of it, focusing on hundreds of miles of those tunnels. Mailspin is part of the IDF's elite Special Operations Yahalom unit that's in charge of demolishing Hamas's tunnel networks.
Gaza Underground is, as you probably heard, 500 kilometers worth of tunnels. What you really have is various kinds. You've got the attack tunnels. Then you have tunnels that are for supplies and for weapons and for caches and for command centers. Then you have small tunnels that are about, let's just say, as wide as I can stretch my hands, and they, like, say this wide, and then you have in there just to run troops through.
The IDF releasing several videos showing its troops blowing up tunnel entrances and various shafts, some located near amusement parks like this one, while others, like this attack tunnel, discovered on the first floor of an apartment building.
The route passed through a residential neighborhood, through civilian houses, right through the living room of a house.
Each tunnel discovery, some located near mosques, hospitals, schools, and churches, coming chock full with weapons like mortars, guns, grenades, RPGs, mines, and more.
Now, all the systems aren't just a straight line. You have secret rooms, doors. You have so many things that you just got to be careful of.
This map showing a high concentration of tunnels in the north and south, with a few in the middle of the Gaza Strip. And now, as IDF forces push deeper into the city, Mailspin, an Israeli-American Christian, is asking people around the world to continue praying for their military operations.
Pray that we'll have that supernatural wisdom. Where are these tunnels? Where is the threat going to come from? And they're tricky. They're tricky people. The Hamas. They're using trickery sometimes. It's not like fighting guerrilla warfare. They're like guerrilla warfare times 2.0.
George Thomas, CBN News, Southern Israel.
Coming up, an unthinkable task. Israeli archaeologists go to southern communities to identify victims of Hamas's massacre. The Israel Antiquities Authority is known worldwide for excavating sites and artifacts from biblical times. As CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl tells us, a new mission has archaeologists involved in recovery efforts from the October 7th massacre.
For the first time, the Israel Antiquities Authority is putting its expertise investigating ancient burn sites to help identify remains in Gaza border communities.
We are able to go into these houses and apply our archaeological methodology into a modern context, as difficult as that is emotionally, but be able to understand what happened in the building, to divide the building into different locations in order to specifically place different events, and to sift through the burnt remains in order to look for anything that can help us identify missing peoples, be it personal adornments, which may be specific to a certain individual that we know is missing, or human remains, primarily human bones, which were burned.
As head of the authority's Dead Sea Scrolls unit, Dr. Joe Uziel normally works in ancient biblical texts.
As we are familiar with this through our excavation contexts, which we deal with destructions from hundreds and thousands of years ago, we can apply them to the current situation and be able to identify remains of humans.
For more than 2 weeks, Uziel has joined 15 archaeologists combing and sifting ashes at the communities of Kibbutz Be'eri, Kfar Aza, and Nir Oz. They are also examining the contents of incinerated cars from the music festival at Kibbutz Re'im.
To date, dozens have been retrieved, including the identification of several individuals that were listed as missing, and we can now say with complete certainty that they were killed during this horrible massacre.
Remains are turned over to the rabbinical unit for DNA identification. Archaeologists began their assignment by looking for evidence of missing people known to be in their homes when Hamas attacked. Later, their mandate broadened to examining all burned houses and cars.
And that is what we deal with on a day-to-day basis, is dealing with past events, not modern events. But the transition is one that I think was, I don't want to say natural, but made a lot of sense, because again, we're just about the only profession that can get down to this finite definition and help the forces that are working in order to identify these missing people.
Uziel says while the task is difficult, the archaeologists are thankful that they can help in this special way.
For me personally, there's a lot of mixed feelings. On the one hand, the things that you see there are unfathomable. You really can't understand. I mean, you see it on TV and photos and videos. It's not the same when you're there and you see the level of atrocities that were committed there. It's really difficult to take in. But on the other hand, to be able to contribute something to help these people, these families that have gone through such horror is in a way uplifting.
Uziel says they'll continue with this task for as long as it takes. Julie Stahl, CBN News, the IAA headquarters, Jerusalem.
The internet is exploding right now with information about freelance reporters affiliated with Hamas capturing moments from the October 7th massacre. And here's the kicker: the photojournalists were often employed by mainstream media outlets. Gil Huffman's watchdog organization, Honest Reporting, broke the story. Gil Huffman with Honest Reporting, tell us about the report you just released about Gaza-based journalists.
So we reported about a few journalists that went into Israel from Gaza on October 7th and took pictures of a lynching of soldiers, and were in Kfar Aza, where many Israelis were murdered by terrorists. And we questioned how they knew to be there and the ethics, because there were Israeli journalists who went and saved lives when they saw people being killed.
Who hires? These are freelance reporters or journalists, but who do they work for?
So we know that there are people who took pictures for AP, Reuters, the New York Times, and CNN. Some maybe worked for them before. Some were just freelance. Some just give pictures later on and know who to give them to. I guess it varies among them.
What questions, ethical questions, does this report raise?
What were they doing in our country? You know, journalists just can't go into our country without permission. That's something that terrorists do. They infiltrated together with terrorists. That alone was aiding and abetting what the terrorists were doing. And there was a guy from Galei Tzahal who was reported from the South for decades named Rami Shani. He went to the dance party and the Nova Festival, and he stopped being a journalist for a little bit and saved lives. Here you're talking about people who took pictures with selfies with tanks as people were being murdered.
Yeah. What have you contacted any of these major media outlets, New York Times, AP, CNN, or Reuters?
Media outlets, we don't at Honest Reporting claim to be a news outlet. We're a media watchdog that monitors coverage of Israel around the world. But the media outlets who have picked up our story have been in touch with them. CNN said they will not use the services of the photographer who was there on October 7th.
Yeah. How would you characterize the reporting by the international media since the beginning of this war?
Horrible. At the very beginning, they got it. They reported us accurately and sympathetically. On the front pages, there were pictures of Noah, a young woman who was being kidnapped into Gaza. At CNN, at the very beginning, they cried on TV, but now it's one-sided against Israel, and people are forgetting what happened on October 7th. And Chris, we can never forget what happened on October 7th.
Yeah. Would you say there was the hospital, the Ali Hospital there? supposedly was bombed by Israel, but it turned out to be a rocket. How would you characterize that reporting?
As unfortunately too typical of what the media does. You know, there was the blade of grass that shows the field, is the term in journalism. They took what Hamas said, the Hamas health ministry, as if it was gospel coming straight from the mouth of Jesus. You can't do that. These are terrorists. These are the same people who attacked America on September 11th, and they're saying very openly intend to attack America in the future. That's why it's so important that Israel win this war. In order to win this war, we need to win on the media battlefield. And that's the key to winning on the military battlefield. It's not just me who said that. Osama bin Laden said it. So it just shows how dangerous inaccurate reporting can be.
Yeah, what happened right after the bombing, the quote-unquote bombing of that hospital? How was it reported?
They, from the very beginning, took the words of Hamas as fact. It took about 4 hours for the IDF to confirm firmly that we didn't do it, which, Chris, is actually very impressive. In the past, it took days, weeks. They really made an effort to get out the truth as fast as they could. I wish they could do it instantaneously. That's the way the world has become. They want, fast food, but it's not possible.
How would you describe how the media is using numbers from the Hamas Ministry of Health to report on?
Absolutely atrocious. And then they try to justify it, say it's really formed by the Palestinian Authority. No, the Palestinian Authority has tried to send in doctors into Gaza to help. Hamas refused. That's the truth. The world needs to know it.
Gil Huffman, any final thoughts on, honest reporting and how the media is covering this war?
Please subscribe to Honest Reporting. Follow us on the social media. We need Christian supporters of Israel to help us win the war on the media battlefield.
Gil Huffman from Honest Reporting, thanks for joining us on CBN News. Up next, a generational divide. Why older and young people are going head-to-head over support for Israel. Israel's war with Hamas has multiple fronts, one of those being the digital space. In the U.S., the information war continues, and a deep division is emerging between supporters of Israel and supporters of the Palestinians. Brody Carter has more.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
These protests are gaining strength as the Israel-Hamas war deepens.
Pro-Palestinian movements like this have been sprouting up all over the world. Here at the March on Washington, there's upwards of 30,000 people here. That's according to a permit from the National Park Service. And their main call is to free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine!
We are an opponent of the political ideology of Zionism, which we view as a racist ideology that aims to justify the expulsion of indigenous people from their land, in this case, the Palestinian people.
Walter Smolarek with Answer Coalition helped coordinate the event. Still, a Harvard Caps Harris poll led by pollster Mark Penn shows an 84% majority of Americans support Israel over Hamas. Penn found a growing divide of support between generations,
as 95% of those over 65 supported Israel, and only 52% of those 18 to 24 supported Israel. I think the younger generation in 18 to 24 is likely to not to have been to Israel. They weren't even here for 9/11, not to have a set of personal experiences related to terrorism, and to be more susceptible to information that they hear online instead.
Social media experts go as far as labeling younger generations as digital natives because they get most of their news on social media, which has fewer safeguards on misinformation and bad actors manipulating public opinion.
Media shapes consciousness, and consciousness shapes culture.
Kinchlow sees platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and especially TikTok as digital battlegrounds vying for public opinion.
And so now you have this whole generation of kids, that's what they're used to when it comes to taking in news. They don't go fact check, they don't take another person's opinion.
Another major concern is Penn's polling data shows 16% of Americans side with Hamas terrorists.
And I think it's unjust and unfair to make this about Hamas every single time.
You would have thought that a terrorist attack against innocent civilians would engender sympathy for Israel, but somehow it seems to have weirdly stirred up a pot of anti-Semitism, at least in some areas and with some communities.
This is why Penn sees the greatest threat to America from this great divide being the anti-Semitism and violence that follows on both sides. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Brody Carter, CBN News.
Still ahead, CBN Israel providing comfort and hope to the victims of Hamas's massacre. War is inherently traumatic, and feeling it intensely right now are the families forced to leave their homes in the north and the south for safety. CBN Israel is there with them to ease the trauma, and it starts with a warm meal and a way to help families have a good day.
As Israelis struggle with the trauma of the terrorist attacks and wait to see what the future holds, they now need a sense of comfort and normalcy. CBN Israel is helping provide that with food and activities for kids and their families.
The food truck is here. This is a place where a lot of distribution is going on. There's volunteers, there's people that have been evacuated from the conflict zone. So this is a great place to just come together, serve everybody as a community.
All these ministries, including CBN Israel, we're giving out stuff to families from the south, from the north, families in need, trying to do what we can together in this time of need.
Ministries and volunteers have come together from within Israel and around the world to help the people of the Holy Land.
We are here as part of the body of believers here in Central Israel, and what you see going on behind us is a fair day sponsored by CBN. CBN's provided these bouncy houses and a food truck and all kinds of wonderful things. As you know, Israel's in turmoil right now, and many families having to leave their homes. So some of those families are being housed here. This is a ministry to those families and an opportunity to give them a few worry-free, kind of normal days.
We have volunteers who come in and spend time with the children, just spend time with the family. And then, as you can see, we have lots of activities too.
Thanks to you, these families have a chance to simply be cared for.
The personal touch of just having an actual sandwich made for you. It's more than a sandwich and a bag of chips and a drink. It really speaks and communicates the love of God in an individual way. And that's really what we want to do.
It's been really neat to see all the cooperation between all the believers, followers of Yeshua, and we're really thankful to CBN for helping make this a special day for these families.
So keep us in prayers, and thank you for all your support.
Thank you guys for helping us make this happen. God bless.
Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. You can access our daily war updates on Facebook and YouTube. And remember to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and the safety of Israel's soldiers and all innocent civilians caught in harm's way. Plus, join with us in prayer for those suffering devastating loss in these days of war and for the safe return of the 240 hostages in Gaza. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.